All right, what's up, folks? We are back. Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We're here today for some DraftKings MMA DFS, UFC Vegas 26 card best bets, picks, lineup advice, FanDuel, tips, DraftKings advice, everything you need to know. All right, what's up, folks?
For tonight's UFC card
Fantasy YouTube
to help
channel.
you out.
We're here today for some DraftKings
Give me one
MMA
second, guys.
DFS.
I am
UFC Vegas 26 card best bets,
One
picks,
second.
lineup advice, FanDuel, tips, DraftKings. There we go. I was getting feedback in my ear, so my apologies. We're good now. We're good to go. We're here at DraftKings UFC 26 DFS, all the keywords we got to jam in at the beginning of this video. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined as always, like I am every Saturday, by Jake the Snake, MMA DFS .com, at DFS_MMA on Twitter. Jake, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? I mean, I feel like it's been a little bit since we've had one of these chaos slates where we get a fight cancellation 5 minutes before we go live, but it is what it is.
The absolute worst. The absolute worst. So just about 10-15 minutes ago, we got word that the Amanda Ribas and Angela Hill fight is off. We're down to just 9 fights for this card. Doesn't affect our bets too much, but it affects our DFS lineups in a tremendous way. And Jake, that's, I think we said it right before we went live. We've lost like a quarter of the card in the last 24 hours because we lost 2 fights yesterday too.
Yeah, man, really brutal. We had a 12-fight slate, kind of a good number, right where we want to be. And then, we lose Rothwell and Lins, and we lose Benoit and Adeshev at weigh-ins. I don't know if anyone watched weigh-ins. Benoit couldn't even stand up, and they still let him try to weigh in twice. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Like, they're trying to kill these fighters. And then, Ribas just tests positive for COVID just now. So now, we already didn't have any dogs barely to speak of, and now we lose Hill, who, she didn't have a high ceiling, but she had a good floor and she had a good chance to win. And I mean, if all the other dogs had lost and Hill had won, maybe a 85 point decision was still going to be enough.
Right. Exactly. So now we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. And shout out to Rummy in the chat who says there were more fights at my cousin's wedding than this card. So totally feel that. Absolutely feel that. So again, we're going to be here till 4:30 p.m. Eastern, breaking down tonight's card. 9 fights. We'll talk about the main event, Rodriguez versus Waterson. We'll talk about some of the newcomers. I think it's just one on this card. Our favorite fights to target for both low-risk and high-risk contests alike on FanDuel and DraftKings. And then our favorite low-owned tournament plays, which are getting thinner and thinner as the hours go on. So we'll do the best we can. And, of course, we'll give our Parlay of the Week and some bets along the way. So if you like what you see, make sure you click that subscribe button here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. And click the join button to chat with us in Discord because there's going to be, I guarantee, a bunch of conversations for the next couple hours before lock with these cancellations. So, Jake, so the main event, we have Rodriguez, we have Waterson. I mean, this whole card has been a shit show because we had 2 fights scrapped before the week started. They had to turn this Waterson-Rodriguez fight into a 5-round main event. Rodriguez had to travel like all this crazy amount of time. Now they're fighting at 125. Like, it's just everything that can go wrong is possibly going wrong. So we have this main event. So what's your analysis, your expectations for these 2 fighters?
Yeah, man, pretty crazy week. This was supposed to be the Sandhagen-Dillashaw, like big title fight, and then Dillashaw dropped out, and then literally this main event was thrown together last minute. It was like Tuesday, and we were still trying to figure out if it was going to happen. Rodriguez didn't even get her visa apparently until Wednesday, and then she had some crazy 20-hour layover from Brazil. She showed up in Vegas at 11 a.m. Thursday morning. I mean, no wonder she wanted to fight at 125 pounds. How would she be cutting weight, in the airport, literally just running in place.
Right.
So just completely crazy main event. So that kind of throws another dynamic in there. I mean, what kind of conditioning are they in? Waterson has been involved in some 5-round fights lately. 2 of her last 3 fights went 5 rounds, whereas Rodriguez has never fought in a 5-round fight in her entire career, even outside of the UFC. So now Rodriguez, she comes in, she's coming off the big win over Amanda Ribas with that round 2 KO after all her other UFC fights had ended in decisions. So I think it's going to be interesting in the later rounds, seeing what kind of shape they're in, especially Rodriguez. So I think in the later rounds, Waterson's pretty interesting. But early on, I mean, Rodriguez's striking is super good. Really, really good striker. Her big weakness is grappling. If she gets taken down, that's where she's really had issues in the UFC. She doesn't have a great takedown defense. It's only 59%. But Waterson's takedown accuracy is just terrible. She's been going, I think it was 1 for 18 in her last fight, 1 for 9 in her 5-round fight before that. She's got a 34% career takedown accuracy, which looks really good for Rodriguez takedowns defended on FanDuel. I mean, she could legitimately get 15 takedowns defended on FanDuel and get an extra 45 points over there. So I think that's kind of interesting. I kind of like Rodriguez to get the early KO here. I think it's pretty good chance in the first couple rounds. I don't think Waterson can really hang with her on the feet. So I think Waterson's going to be trying to throw a lot of kicks to keep the distance. And then if she's losing, she's going to shoot for a bunch of takedowns. So I guess the big question will be whether or not she can get her down. And if she can, Waterson has a chance, especially on DraftKings, to put up a decent score. But if she can't, I think Rodriguez just pieces her up on the feet and ends up either getting a knockout or potentially putting up a high-volume decision here. But we really don't know how she's going to look in rounds 4 and 5. So that's kind of the mystery.
Yeah, lots of questions, and this all now comes back to the fact in DFS that this is a 9-fight card. You have 10, 11, 12, sometimes 14, 15 fights. The main event, depending on how you look at it, and we got a question here in the chat from E asking about the main fight and how necessary it is to use it. Obviously, Jake, the less fights are on a card, the more likely that a 5-rounder compared to 3-rounders ends up in the optimal lineup. And we lost a potential high score in Ribas near the top of the salary range, so that increases the probability as well. So let's talk about this from a 9-fight perspective overall. If you're playing, low risk contest, high risk contest, I would say we talk about stacking in low risk. 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups, especially on DraftKings. Given the fact that Waterson is so cheap, I think stacking is easily the play in low-risk contests. And then high-risk contests, it's going to be a little bit difficult to be left out of the optimal lineup. But I would say, Jake, if Waterson wins, she's going to be in the optimal lineup. Whereas Rodriguez wins, there are definitely ways she doesn't get there, and I think that's how the main event could fail in tournaments.
Totally agree right there. I mean, Waterson's so cheap. Even if she scored 90 points in a decision win, which is kind of on the low side, she scored 100 last time, and she only landed 1 takedown, on 18 attempts, and she scored 100 points. So even if she does worse than that, she's still probably going to end up in the optimal, and she could easily do better. So I totally agree. If Waterson wins, she's going to be in the optimal. She's got a 34% chance of winning. We had her projected right around 30, 31% owned. That went up to about 35 after the Hill fight dropped out, but it's still right around. You can compare the implied chances of her winning and the projected ownership. So we can't call her over-owned. And then with Rodriguez, I mean, it's basically with her, it comes down to can she outscore DeLima, Gillespie, Klein? There's probably only going to be 2 of those people, and Neal. There's probably only going to be 2 of those people in the optimal lineup. So it just depends on who scores more. I mean, they can't all end up in there. So there's, like you said, there's a great chance that she could get a finish. Last time she scored 88 DraftKings points in a round 2 KO. That's not going to get there.
Yeah, and that was in the matchup against Rivas where she was basically controlled the whole first round and did nothing, and then comes out and gets the round 2 KO. So we'll see. So to answer everyone's question, low risk contest, stack it up, guarantee an 85, 90 plus point score. And then in tournaments, if you're playing multiple lineups, try to match the field on Waterson at least, 30, 40% of your lineups. And then as far as Rodriguez goes, it depends on how you view the other big favorites. And we see on screen here, this is the daily plug, occupyfantasy.com, that Jake writes every single week. The betting odds section talks about the largest favorites and the highest finish probabilities. Jake, we do have 1 newcomer on this card, and basically almost 2. Ludovic Klein, who's the biggest favorite on the slate at minus 250. I think we could almost classify him as a newcomer because his first UFC fight lasted a minute. So we didn't really get to see much action out of him. So he alongside with Carlston Harris, who is actually the plug cover boy this week. Very rare do we get a debut fighter on the cover. Last time we did it was King Casey, who I don't think Carlson as good of a prospect as King Casey was, but nonetheless, he looks like a good DFS play. So Jake, talk to me about Carlston Harris, what you saw on tape, and then Ludovic Klein, who I know you're a big fan of.
Yeah, I mean, I like both these guys, but for DFS, I'm higher on playing Harris today. I think Klein probably has a higher chance of getting a finish, but at his price, he's also got a higher chance of being left out of the optimal. So Harris, if you look at some of his tape, a lot of the tape that's available is a little bit older. You kind of have to dig a little bit on the dark web to find some of that newer stuff. But If you look at some of his older tape, I mean, this guy is just relentlessly going after takedowns, just like from the beginning of the fights, just nonstop grappling. I mean, I think I charted him at like 15 takedowns attempts or something in his 5-round decision win on Brave. But he's actually had a ton of finishes too. So he's not just like a decision guy. His last 4 fights have all ended early. He's won his last 3 in the first 2 rounds. I think he's won 14 of his last 16 fights, and he's only been finished once in his career, which was in a Brave title fight where he got knocked out in the first round. But other than that, he's won 7 of his last 8 fights, super good grappler, pretty decent on the feet. And I mean, he has the potential to just put up a huge grappling performance here. I mean, we're talking like potentially double-digit takedowns, but if not, 5 to 8 takedowns and a ton of control time. And he's going against Aguilera, who's just a one-dimensional power puncher. So, I mean, this guy has no grappling game whatsoever. So, I mean, the risk here is that Aguilera just knocks him out immediately, which is what Aguilera does. Yeah. And that's totally in play. But if that doesn't happen, we think Harris is just going to dominate him on the ground and either submit him, knock him out, or grind it out to a super grappling-heavy decision. So, I mean, all those would score really well. And he's kind of mid-priced. He's $8,600 on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel. In a decision, he's definitely going to score better on DraftKings because it means he probably just grappled the whole time. He's going to have like 10 minutes of control time and probably a decent amount of ground strikes. But I think there's a pretty good chance he gets a finish here in the first 2 rounds. Basically, all of Aguilera's fights end early. He either knocks people out or gets finished himself. He's coming off a round 2 submission loss to Sean Brady. I mean, Brady's really good. We're not comparing Harris to Brady necessarily. But Harris could – I mean, it's a good matchup. And – I mean, these first fights have been going off. I mean, when's the last time one of them didn't? I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but
people they must be hyped up to start the show for everybody, right? Everyone comes out. I mean, the way we started 261 was just like the craziest chaotic fight I've ever seen, and we've been getting a lot of fights like that to start these cards. And it was funny. I think it was Tuesday. You messaged me and said, "Yo, have you watched Carlston to Wallace Willie yet?" And I was like, who's that? And then I was like, oh, Carlston Harris is on the card. He's a newcomer. I took a look at some of his tape. I was like, now I see why you compare him to D-Val with all the takedown attempts. So, but, if you look at the biggest favorite on the slate, Ludovic Klein, who did get just a ridiculous KO in his UFC debut, lasted about a minute. He's the biggest favorite on the card, minus 250. But Jake, the dude's from a pure fighting perspective, he's unbelievable. I know you're a big fan of him. I know you like him to get an early KO here. But the big problem is he needs that early KO because it's not like he's throwing a ton of volume, and it's not like he really mixes in any grappling.
Yeah, for sure, man. He's like super patient. I would compare him to like a Cobra or something. He's like out there just stalking his opponent, just waiting for the entry shot. He's not going to be throwing much volume. He's going to be waiting for someone to mess up, and he's going to throw a jab and follow it up with just the most violent left head kick you've ever seen. And that's how he got his first finish. That's how he's gotten like 3 of his recent finishes, is just with these like super crazy left head kicks. And it's always the same thing. He's got really good hands too. But if you leave the right side of your face open, you're going to have a foot like right there. And the thing with Trezano that you might see on tape is when people are punching, he's constantly ducking his head to the right. And it sets up so perfectly. I mean, so perfectly for the Klein left head kick, almost too perfectly. Like Trezano has to have been working on this because, I mean, anyone that watches tape, you're just like, oh, yeah, he's going to get kicked in the face right there and then right there. Like, it's just the same thing over and over again.
But dude, we'll see. Because, I mean, we hear these fighters all the time. No, I don't watch tape. I don't want to get in my head. And it's like, well, you better fucking watch tape against this guy because you're going to be knocked out in the first round if not.
Yeah, man. But if he doesn't get the knockout, like you said, if he doesn't get the first round knockout, he's not going to throw much volume. So, I mean, there's a really good chance he gets a second round knockout and that it only scores like 90 points or something, which he's the highest priced fighter on both slates, both sites. So I think he needs like something weird to happen to really go off, like a finish in the first 60 seconds on DraftKings, 2 knockdowns, or else just for the other high priced fighters to bust for him to really be useful here, just at his price. I mean, that's the tough part for him is just, he's got to outscore Gillespie, who's going to go for like 25 takedown attempts. He's got to outscore Neal. He's got to outscore DeLima. He's got to outscore Rodriguez. So, I mean, you have a lot of people with the potential to score high. I mean, this is kind of the issue with all of these high-priced guys. They're all set up to score well. So, I mean, we could easily see something where we get a couple guys that score over 100 points and are left out of the optimal.
For sure, especially if they get squeezed out with only 9 fights on the card. So it definitely makes it tough. See, we got a bunch of people in the chat here. We got Mr. Miyagi, Rummy, Timothy, Ryan, Eagles, the Red Pill Owl, which is a fantastic name. Ryan says he's thinking Chukwi will get back to his first round knockout ways. He might be a little underowned, and should be noted that Park didn't look great on the scale. Jake, we always like to target guys who don't look that great on the scale. What were your thoughts on Park during his weigh-ins, and then the big weigh-in narrative, which is Ferreira, who against Gillespie, who he looked terrible.
Right. I mean, if we want to talk about weigh-in narratives, I thought Chukwi looked bad on the scales. He was the last one to weigh in. He was super slow walking up there. He was kind of walking like a cyborg, like just moving his arms and not anything else. That guy is a brutal weight cut. He used to be a heavyweight, and then he came down to 225, and then he came down to 205. This is only his second fight at 185 pounds. And I mean, this guy's got to be like removing organs or something to hit 185. Like, I have no idea how he does it. I mean, watch some of his older fights. He is massive. Like, he is like a baby Nagano. And I don't know, man. I'm a little worried about Chukwi potentially with his cardio, because Park loves to shoot for a bunch of takedowns. Chukwi is just a pure kickboxer. If Park is successful in getting him down, I think he could wear him out. And after the way he looked at weigh-ins, I mean, we could see Park just kind of dominate him on the ground. Park's never been knocked out. So I don't know that it's a great matchup for Chukwi to get a knockout. I mean, if he did get it, it would be the first time that Park's ever been knocked out. And I don't know. I thought Park looked fine. I mean, he looked like Park. You know, he's never going to look great, but he just looked like his normal self.
And we got to figure Park, right? Like, his last fight, this was pre-DraftKings scoring change. And while who'd he face in that last fight, Jake? I can't remember who it was.
John Phillips. That was the reason for the DraftKings.
Literally, the catalyst for the scoring change was that fight. He scored like 40 points in the old scoring system. If you look at his game logs now, it's like 128 points.
Yeah, he legit doubled his score with the new rules.
Right, and not saying Chukwi is Phillips by any means, but that goes to show the type of fighter that Park is. And Park rate's pretty high in our model, and I agree with you, Jake. I think I'd like the Park side there. He's one of my highest exposed fighters in the bottom half of the salary range. So, all right, guys, let's see. It's 4:18. Tons of chaos today. We're trying to sort through it all and break it all down for you. So let's accelerate this a little bit, Jake. Let's talk about some fights that you'd like to target in DFS today.
Yeah, I mean, so the two big ones are kind of ones that we've talked about a little bit with Harris and Aguilera. Great fight. I think whoever wins scores big. Don't really see it going into decision. We already talked about it, though. So the other one is going to be DeLima and Green. And that one's, I mean, that's kind of a gimme. It's the most likely fight on the slate to end early. DeLima has the highest finishing chances at a ridiculous 51%. He's got the highest round one finishing chances at 24%, which just blows away everyone else on the slate. DeLima, 10 of his 11 UFC fights have ended early. Green, 6 of his 7 have ended early. I mean, it would be shocking if this fight made it out of the second round, but weird things happen. I'm not sure DeLima has the gas tank to make it to the second half of the fight. But so Green is like kind of like this submission giant, really weird dude. He's like 6'7", but like can't take a punch. Like he I don't know. He's a weird guy. Like, he only has 2 knockouts. He has 5 submissions, and he's like this just giant, like lumbering an oaf.
He towered over DeLima at the weigh-ins, right? In the face-offs.
Dude, he towers over everyone. Yeah. I mean, he made Greg Hardy look small kind of in their last fight. But I don't know. So the thing is, like, DeLima's last 5 losses have all come by submission. Green has lost 3 of his last 4 fights early. Green's a submission guy. DeLima's a submission vulnerability. But DeLima's really good at just aggressively attacking people with strikes, and Green is terrible under pressure. So I really love this spot for DeLima to get a first-round knockout, personally. Green, despite being a submission guy, he's never even shot for a takedown in the UFC, which I thought was weird.
Just get knocked down.
Exactly.
And then hope for a sub.
In the Vellante fight, literally he was about to get finished on his back, and he just grabs Vellante and pulls him to his chest to the point that Vellante can't breathe and just taps out. It was the weirdest submission ever. He totally should have lost that fight, and if he had, he would have lost the last 4 in a row. So I like the spot for DeLima. I don't see Green winning, but if Green does win, I think he gets a submission, probably puts up a big score. And, you know, on a slate we're looking for dogs, he's $7,109. So if he wins, he's almost a lock for the optimal, unless this fight's a complete bust that somehow goes to decision, which I don't see that happening.
Right, exactly. So again, for those of you just joining, we are down to 9 fights. We started the week with 12. We started before this week with a lot more than 12. So, but we're down to 9. And if you missed the discussion about how that affects the DFS, go back and rewind back to the first 5 to 10 minutes of the show and get that information. All right, so we've talked about the main event. We've broken that down. We've talked about the newcomer. We've talked about fights we want to target. Now, Jake, it's increasingly more difficult with only 9 fights to talk about quote unquote low owned fighters. But if we're talking about fighters in the bottom third of ownership for tournaments, we need one, probably two, maybe three on a slate like this. Who are fighters that you're looking at in that lower ownership range that you think can put up a big score?
Favorite borderline low owned. I don't even know if he qualifies anymore after everyone's ownership got bumped up. Is going to be Kyle Dawkis. He's still going to be on the lower end. He's not going to be like the super low owned guy, but we have him in the mid 20s right now, which on a 9-fight slate is still pretty relatively low owned. I mean, you're not going to find anyone that's 15% owned now because the collective ownership all went up after the Hill dropped out. So Dawkis is my favorite play, and he's a great leverage spot on Hawes. Hawes is definitely going to be the most popular underdog in the slate, no doubt about it. Everyone's going to play Hawes. He's only had 2 fights. He won them both. Even in a decision, he put up a big DraftKings score, and before that, he just killed Jacob Malkoun, which gave us Jacob Malkoun last time, which was great. Dawkis is towering over Hawes. Like, I think when everyone thinks about Kyle and Chris Dawkis, they think Kyle is way smaller, but they're the exact same height and have the exact same reach. Like, Chris is just thicker than Kyle. Like, Kyle's a big guy, but he looks small for some reason on tape. I don't know what it is. But he towered over Hawes. Kyle's never been finished. Hawes has lost a couple fights in the second round. He almost got finished in the third round of his last fight. I think Hawes has a lot more concerns that people aren't really paying attention to, and Dawkis has yet to hit a ceiling. So this is a great spot for Dawkis to get a finish. I like the Dawkis round 2 sub. I think that's a pretty likely outcome. Or else maybe he's never knocked anyone out in his career, but Hawes was on wobbly legs late in his last fight, so it wouldn't be impossible for Dawkis to get a KO. But, a second or third round submission for Dawkis, I think there's a good chance of that, or potentially a grappling heavy decision. And then the other one's Morano, I think is sort of interesting as a low-owned option. I don't love him. He took this fight on short notice, but Cerrone's lost like 5 in a row. I mean, whatever. His last fight was technically a draw from an eye poke. I mean, he got his ass kicked. It was clearly a loss. Yep. And then the draw got converted to a no contest, so it doesn't even show up on the thing. But whatever. He still lost 5 in a row in my mind. But Morano's not great. He's good at taking advantage of lower-level fighters. You might remember the Reese McKee fight where he put up like over 200 total strikes, like 176. That was only 2 fights ago. I mean, that was last November. And he just had a monster performance. But, I mean, we're not comparing Cerrone to Reese McKee. And then, Morano he laid an egg against Pettis in his next fight. But Pettis was, like, circling away the whole time. So I think we should just ignore that and assume this is going to be a brawl. And I think Cerrone is definitely going to want to take part in a brawl. It could be his last fight, I mean, this could be a retirement fight for Cerrone. So I think that turns into a brawl. Maybe Cerrone still wins. Maybe he even gets a finish. But I think Morano has the potential to put up a high-volume decision similar to what Nico Price did last time. Although Nico Price is a better fighter than Morano. Nico Price has actually knocked out Morano, so
there you go.
Whatever.
I mean, so here's 2 things, right? Like, as far as the Hawes-Dawkis fight, that's the perfect situation that we look for. You break down the tape, we have the model, but we're always looking for these scenarios, right? The scenarios where we have a fighter coming in that the field is high on, sometimes justified, sometimes not, but they haven't really seen their floor yet. And then we have the opposite side, a fighter that, for whatever reason, hasn't hit their ceiling yet, whether they've been unlucky in the scoring, whether they've had some tough matchups. Whatever it may be, but this Dawkis-Hawes fight is, the perfect example of this with a guy like Dawkis who hasn't hit his ceiling, and a guy like Hawes who we've been fading the last 2 times, and has made us look stupid. But again, there are serious concerns with Hawes, and I think Dawkis is a good enough fighter to expose those. And as far as Cerrone and Morano, like, Cerrone is technically underpriced if you look at his money line, -200 compared to the fighters above him and below him. So generally, when we see that happen, they get a little bit of a bump in ownership. So similar scenario there where we get a little bit of leverage playing against them, because Morano could be one of the lowest owned fighters on the whole slate, Jake. So I really like both those calls.
Yeah, man, totally.
All right, guys, we're here for 5 more minutes till 4:30 p.m. Eastern. If you like what you see, make sure you click the subscribe button right below the video. Get access to all of our videos and live streams here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. The more thumbs ups that we get, it lets us know that we should continue to make this type of content. It lets us know that you guys like it. Any questions you have, hop in the chat for these last 5 minutes, rapid fire them. Or if you miss it, you can always just hop in our Discord channel. Just click the join button right below the video, occupyfantasy.com/Discord to talk with other members and Occupy Fantasy staff. All right, Jake, I think it's about time. We got to talk about the parlay of the week. You've been hot, had a down week last week in the bets, but I have no concerns. We're not gonna bounce back tonight. So I'll let you start. We're gonna do our stream parlay of the week. Give me your favorite bet to include in our parlay.
Yeah, man. Just real quick on last week, it's tough to hit props when every single fight ends in a decision except for Giga fucking Chikadze landing a 10-second liver KO. But anyways, on to next week. I'm gonna roll with my boy Jeff Neal here. Inside the distance plus 155. I think he finishes Magny, and I think it probably comes in the first half of the fight.
Real quick, while I'm looking for my bet, we haven't talked about that fight at all. And I know you're super high on Jeff Neal. I'm not as high on him. The model's not as high on him, but you are super high. So just take a minute or so to discuss, his outlook.
Yeah, man. So Jeff Neal coming off a loss, which I always love, buying low on guys. He's coming off a loss where we were expecting him to lose. He's going against Stephen Thompson, Wonder Boy karate style. It was a terrible matchup. It was a 3-round fight that was stretched out to 5 on short notice because Chimaev's fight got canceled. But before that, Jeff Neal was on this crazy winning streak. I think he had won 7 in a row. He had just knocked out Mike Perry in 90 seconds in the first round. Only person to ever do that. He knocked out Nico Price before that. His only UFC fight to go to a decision was against Belal Muhammad, who takes everyone to a decision. Neal finished his other 4 UFC opponents. And, if you're looking at guys that are going to have some variance coming their way, all of Neal's finishes have come early in the rounds, which generally don't score well. So it's kind of the opposite of Gillespie, who all of his finishes have come late in the rounds, and he's put up huge scores. I'm just expecting some variance on Jeff Neal. He's got, I think, 5 knockdowns in his last handful of fights. If you look at Magny, most of his finishes have come early. Magny's coming off a smothering wrestling loss, so I think he might be more inclined to kind of brawl with Neal a little bit. But I think Neal's really looking to prove himself right now. I think people are kind of doubting him after his last loss, and I think he's really going to turn it on and look to finish Magny in the first round. And you just get a motivated guy, a buy low opportunity. I think he's going to go a little bit overlooked with some of the other options on the slate, so we can get him at slightly lower ownership. And I think he's got the potential to get some takedowns defended on FanDuel as well, making him a super interesting MVP option over there if he can get. He has the potential to get a couple takedowns defended, a knockdown or 2, and a round 1 KO and just blow this slate up.
That's true. He really does have that opportunity. So you're taking Neal. Was it inside the distance? Was that what your bet?
Yeah, Neal inside the distance at plus 155.
All right, and I'm going to take, this is a super chalky pick, but I'm going to take DeLima first round KO, plus 300. So DeLima to win in first round by knockout, plus 300. Neal plus 155. You said inside the distance. This is a pretty low risk parlay for us, but we're trying to get back on the horse here. So, Jake, do you know what that pays out?
I do, because I knew you were going to do it. Did you say round 1 win or round 1 KO?
I said round 1 KO. How did you know I was going to do that one?
I said round 1 win. I figured you thought I was going to think that you were going to go Rodriguez KO, so I switched it up to DeLima.
Now we're just out metaing each other.
Dude, I knew you were going to go KO over win because I put win on the plug, and I was like, he's going to try to outsmart me here. But I wrote round 1 win because I thought you might want to try to hit one. But yep. All right. Anyways, I do have that ready. Let me pull it up. It's hilarious. 2 for 2 so far. I'm guessing your picks.
So here's the thing. I was going to actually dive in, 20 minutes before the stream, and I'm going to pick a bet that I like that Jake's not even. It's going to be way off the radar. Jake's not even going to realize what's going on. But then all the chaos hit, and I didn't have a chance to, so I had to go with my gut, which clearly my gut instinct better than I do. So.
Well, I knew DeLima was high in the model, so I figured you would roll with that. You said KO opposed to round 1. All right, so that's going to be 1150. It's plus 390 for DeLima and plus 155 for Neal. So yeah, plus 1150. So we can get right back on track, make up for 11 losing weeks here.
I think everyone would be okay with an 11.5 to 1 parlay. So if you like that, go bet. If you're in a legal sports betting state, check out the betting link at the top of OccupyFantasy.com to get some sweet deposit bonuses if you're in one of those states. All right, so that'll do it for this show. We're past 4:30. If you have any further questions, hop in our Discord. Click the join button below the video. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord with instructions on how to join. Give us a subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go follow Jake at DFS_MMA on Twitter. Go read the sheet at MMA DFS.com, where he breaks down all of the fights and gives DFS and betting implications. And you can read the Daily Plug, which he also produces at OccupyFantasy.com. Filters out the top plays and lineup strategies for FanDuel and DraftKings. And then check out our Occupy model, projected ownership with fighter rankings for both FanDuel and DraftKings. So for Jake, I am Brian. We appreciate everyone listening. Good luck on this chaotic slate, and we'll talk to you soon.